Chapter 2. Sunny Home. The day the world went quiet. 9-year-old Rosie sat on the polished wooden floor of the Sunny Home playroom, the tip of her blue marker squeaking rhythmically against the paper. She was lost in her own world, meticulously detailing a deep blue ocean where a golden butterfly soared above it. A cheerful, wordless tune hummed behind her teeth, a small, happy sound in a house usually filled with the chaotic energy of 20 other children. The song died in her throat when a sharp, distant shriek pierced the air. Rosie froze, the marker hovering over the page. She waited, her heart beginning a slow, heavy thud against her ribs. She set the marker down with a trembling hand and stood up. The playroom, once a sanctuary of toys and sunlight, suddenly felt too large. She crept toward the heavy wooden sliding doors, her sneakers quietly scuffing over the grain. Pressing her ear to the wood, she strained to hear the familiar sounds of Mrs. Kim in the kitchen or the older boys wrestling in the hall. Instead, a second shriek erupted, closer this time, ending abruptly in a wet, choking sound. Rosie gasped and recoiled, taking a step back. Driven by a terrifying need to know, she gripped the handle and slid the door open. The hallway was empty. There were no bodies, no struggle, only a fine, shimmering mist of white, smoke-like dust hung suspended in the air. As she watched, a breeze from an open foyer window caught the particles, whisking them out into the afternoon sky like dandelion seeds. Rosie blinked, her mind refusing to process the void. "Mrs. Kim?" she whispered. A dog barked somewhere far down the street, a lonely, frantic sound that broke her trance. She stepped out into the foyer. The house was deathly still. No footsteps, no laughter, no clatter of dishes. "Hello?" she called out, her voice cracking. "Henry? Sarah?" Her own voice echoed back to her, mocking and hollow. For the first time since the storm had claimed her parents, Rosie felt the cold, sharp edge of true abandonment. She ran from room to room, throwing open doors and screaming names until her throat burned, but only the silence answered. A world in shadows. The weeks that followed were a blur of escalating madness. Through the flickering screen of the playroom television and the crackle of the battery-operated radio, Rosie watched the world tear itself apart. News anchors, their faces pale and eyes bloodshot, reported the same impossible statistics. 75% of the population evaporated. Footage showed busy intersections filled with riderless bicycles and cars that had drifted into storefronts, their drivers simply gone. Animals had vanished too, entire herds of cattle left empty pastures, family dogs left collars on the floor. Mourning turned to disbelief, and disbelief turned to rage. As the government struggled to maintain order, routine biological checks began. Families were torn apart in the name of safety as scientists desperately tested survivors for a glow or a sickness. It was during these broadcasts that the word first surfaced: golden. The rumors were wild and contradictory. Some said they were a new evolution. Others said they were an invasive species wearing human skin. They were the cause of the disappearances, the headlines screamed, but they might also be the only cure. But Rosie's own history had always been whispered about in similar tones. To the people of Moon Lake, Rosie was the miracle of the mist. The miracle of Moon Lake. 9 years earlier, the blue waters of Moon Lake had been a graveyard of gray clouds and white-capped waves. A heavy storm had just broken, leaving the air thick and the water restless. "Look there," an old fisherman named Elias shouted, pointing a weathered finger toward a dark shape bobbing in the swells. The 3 men on the small fishing boat, the Silverfin, adjusted their course. As they drew closer, their grim expressions shifted to pure astonishment. It wasn't debris or a drowned animal. It was a slab of driftwood, and perched atop it was a baby, wrapped in a sodden wool blanket. She wasn't crying. She wasn't blue with cold. She simply lay there in a peaceful slumber. "God have mercy," one of the men breathed as they scooped her up. They scanned the horizon for a wreckage, for parents, for anyone else, but the lake was empty. The boat turned toward the shore, carrying the silent infant back to civilization. Behind them, the empty driftwood bobbed once, twice, and then drifted away into the vast, indifferent blue. Goodbyes. Elias was the one who carried her to the front door of the quaint, ivy-covered house with the hand-painted "Sunny Home" sign. When the door opened, they were met by Mrs. Kim. She was young then, with round spectacles and a white sundress. Her face transformed from curiosity to radiant warmth the moment she saw the child in the fisherman's arms. "Welcome home, Rosie," Mrs. Kim had whispered, cradling the baby against her heart. The door had closed, and for 9 years that sign had been Rosie's North Star. 2 weeks after the passing. The 9-year-old Rosie stood on the porch of Sunny Home, but the yellow dress was gone, and the woman who wore it was now just dust in the wind. Rosie adjusted the straps of her favorite green backpack. Her eyes were rimmed with red from days of weeping, but a new, cold iron had entered her gaze. She knew now that the family she had waited for wasn't coming back. She knew, with a child's intuitive dread, that the house was no longer a home. It was a tomb. She took one final look at the Sunny Home sign, its paint peeling in the sun. Without a word, she turned her back on her childhood and began to walk, a small figure disappearing into the vast, quiet uncertainty of a broken world.